Greeting YouTube. I am currently looking at the game Crypts and Things, which has has the rather silly name for your GM called the Crypt Keeper. Um, and because somebody suggested I might find it interesting, based off of the my thoughts on was it bugbears and something or other. It was a stripped down version of fifth edition, which was actually I think was the first stripped down first version of fifth edition rules that I think had any kind of merit whatsoever. Yeah, well, they thought, well, maybe you'd like this one. So I've been reading it, and it does in fact have all of the elements of the swords and wizardry rule system, which is what it's based off of, that I really, really hate. Um, but one of the things that popped up to me, and this is something that existed way back in the original D&D, is that when you get to a certain class level, and it's 9's the magic number, when you have the ability to establish, if you're a fighter, a stronghold, or a wizard school, or your own temple, or almost every single class would have the ability at level 9 to establish some kind of a foundation of one form or other, a thieves guild in case you're a rogue. Um, or we actually called them thieves back then. Um, and I got me thinking about it. If you were to do that, if everybody gets to level 9, and every single class is significantly different from every other class, that means your adventuring party ends. Because everybody's going to go to the four corners of the earth and start doing their own thing. Now, I guess you could conceivably try to pool all these things into one kind of physical location, but it's going to be a fairly strange place with, a magic school in one corner and a temple in another corner and a thieves guild in another and a stronghold over there, and maybe like the place where the barbarians hang out when they're not, when they're partying, when they're not out there raiding the local, X, Y, or Z. So it's, to me, it's a weird mechanic that at the time nobody questioned. Back in the old days, we were just like, oh, cool, I can do this thing now. But here's it. Here's just the thing though. I don't remember any of us ever doing that. None of us. I mean, we would eventually come to establish some kind of a home base or, some kind of retirement place or just our chill space. But it was never I'm creating this location to pull in followers. Of course, in the third edition rules, you could just get to sixth level, take the leadership feat, and suddenly you would begin to uh, pull in people that wanted to follow you because you were well known. You started to become a name, and people were interested in learning from you and stuff. Which to me was a far more organic way of doing it than just saying suddenly you pop up at ninth level and suddenly all these people want to come around and they all want to become members of your household or your stronghold or your school or what have you. Um, it just seemed to be like a whole lot of stuff going on all at once. Though I guess if you'd really built that into the campaign from an earlier point, maybe it would make sense, but we never did. We were very much the old classic murder hobos. Um, and I thought, okay, having that ninth level, you can't call it a capstone, it's ninth level, but having that ninth level trigger for some kind of an event makes sense because now you've gotten yourself to a point where you're fairly powerful. You've got money, you've got retinues of some kind. Maybe it's hirelings and stuff. Maybe it's other player characters that are kind of like they're your squires or something. But the point is that you've got some kind of a structure, but you still want to keep the party together as a bunch of group, as a team, even though they're from very disparate backgrounds. So let's face it, a ranger and a fighter and a cleric and a rogue aren't necessarily going to have the same life paths unless they're together as some kind of a friend unit, an adventuring party. So I'm like, okay, how could you keep that team together without losing that idea of establishing something as a base or as an endeavor together? And so I thought, okay, how can I flip that around? How can I make it more interesting? So let's take, for example, the Explorers Guild. So you have to have in your campaign, you'd have to have there be an explorer's guild that has locations more than one place. Kind of like based on the old stodgy British things from like Around the World in 80 Days, that kind of thing, but a little bit more egalitarian, a little bit more hands-on with the world. Uh, but a repository where they do research and they have stuff available so that adventurers come there, they pay their dues, and eventually they to do research and things like that. And when they get to a certain level, suddenly they become vested. And now you're vested, so you don't have to pay dues anymore. You are still considered obligated to donate data and maybe fines and stuff, and not fines in the sense you found something. You're dropping off trophies. You're dropping off samples of weird plants and monsters you found. You're dropping off journals and spell books after you're done with them, so that they can become part of the repository, and so that everybody can now use that when they're doing their research for their adventures, that kind of thing. So you get to ninth level, you're now all vested in this. So now if you go to any of these these explorer guilds around the world or continent or whatever, you can stay there free of charge, so long as you are considered an active and contributing member, or you're a legacy. Say, for example, you're retired essentially, but you've donated so much of your life to this, they're just going to let you stay there forever as your retirement place. But so long as you're actively working, you can still be an adventurer, going from place to place to place, but staying at one of these guilds for weeks, months before you go on another adventure. It takes you closer to another guild where you then stay there. So that's one way to do that. You become vested in and accepted in that. All right, you've achieved tenure, if you will. But also, I thought, okay, well, I like that idea. But what if you want to have a more mercantile kind of a campaign? So your characters start off as caravan guards. It's a solid foundation. A caravan in a world of monsters and magic is going to need a fairly diverse group of people to function as support staff. So your group out there, you're doing your thing, and you've a couple adventures under your belt where you've helped protect it against a number of different attacks, maybe pieced apart some kind of conspiracies or found people that are like undermining your caravan company and they're trying to sell information to somebody else, or they're feeding information to some bandit group so that they'll get a cut of the profits, that kind of thing. And eventually you make a name for yourself, and the leadership starts coming to you to say, okay, we're going to do a new route in this direction, or at least we'd like to. We'd like you to go scout it out. Find out who are the power players on this route that we'd like to take. What are the monsters that we might face? What are the bandits? What are the political structures going on in the area that could cause us a problem, or we could turn to our advantage? And then that moves you up in the ranks till eventually you get to ninth, and now you are given shares in the company. So now you get a passive income, and you can go free of charge and stay at any of the caravan houses that are on the different caravan routes that your caravan company controls. And so your adventuring party could go, and whether you're a person or an adventuring group, you go there, you stay at that caravan location, the particular um, keep that, or not stronghold. What do you call a stronghold? Business, maybe? I don't know. But it's where the caravan sets up their business opportunities in that city. You spend a few months there, and then you just hop on board the next caravan headed out this way, whether the caravan is across the land, or it's across the ocean, or it's an airship, or a spelljammer. It doesn't matter. And you then end up in another place where there's a location, and you can hang out there. So now you are part of that business structure as well as the politicking, but not only within your own caravan company, but amongst the competitors of other caravan companies out there, plus all those that may want to help you or hurt you, and all those who might just want to take advantage of you. So that's an entire structure. Now, another idea I had was, what if you were doing a campaign that's a little bit more fantastical, and it's got a lot of interaction between the elements. So you find the players find themselves doing a lot of work for elemental lords or ladies. And the at first, of course, it's very low level stuff. You're just kind of like cooperating and working with some powerful elementals. They're not in the command structure. They're just tougher than the others. But that brings you to the attention of their bosses who start pulling you for adventures. And along comes ninth level, and one of them who you've done a solid says, hey, I'd like to give you reward. Which is because money isn't something that they really care a great deal about. It's about power and influence, and it's about aiding those in the way that you can. Okay, so their currency is what can they do as an elemental lord. So one of them says, okay, I am going to create a pocket dimension just for you. And so they snap their fingers and they call into existence a pocket dimension, which is a perfectly temperate world. It's 10 square miles. That's 6,400 acres. That's a pretty good chunk of area. It's wrapped. So if you walk in a straight line, you'll end up back where you have. So there's no boundaries or walls you have to worry about. It's a perfect environment. It's got all the wildlife that it's supposed to have. And it's a place where you could have each party member could have their own house. There could be a main hall where they all meet. It's big enough to have farms and vineyards, and maybe you build a small village where you have people. Maybe it's populated with disembodied spirits like advanced unseen servants that do all the work. But and then while they can, like, say, for example, make you very staple, safe, boring food, if you want something better, you're going to have to bring yourself your own chef in who doesn't mind living in a pocket dimension. Um, but that means that you all have a central location. It's a party thing, but it's also your own village. It's also allowing you the flexibility of creating very much individual dwellings and structures. And I know people, I've gamed with people who would be all over that. The fact that they would be able to get graph paper out and draw the floor plans of their perfect house with all the little nooks and crannies, they would be all over that. I know I would be one of them. Um, so again, that's a reflection of you get to that certain power level and you're being rewarded with something which is really cool, but not game breaking. Yes, you can access this from anywhere you are in the world, but what if you have to have a certain quorum to access it? So if the party ever breaks up, you can't access that pocket dimension anymore. You have to keep the party together so that there's a certain quorum before you can open the gate that goes to that pocket dimension. And again, in-game motivation to keep the party together. So these are just some ideas that came off the top of my head while reading about the whole stronghold mechanic, because it seems archaic to be reading that in the year 2024, and it's something that I remember quite vividly from the past, but we never used it. And I don't know many people that did. So it just seems like a wasted class feature. And I thought, why don't we make that a little bit more interesting? So tell me, did you ever use that mechanic with the Stronghold or Wizard's School or whatever? And if you did, how did it work out for you? Did it help bring your group together, or did it break you apart? And do you think any of the suggestions I've made in this video hold any merit? And did you have any new suggestions that I did not think of? So let's talk about the modern interpretation of founding your own stronghold.